Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app, O'Connor and Company.
Always the black-rimmed, oversized glasses. Always. It's like it haunts me. What's happened? Good morning. It's 7:07. It's Monday. It's O'Connor and Company, and I'm back from vacation. Thank you to Andrew Langer for filling in the gaps while Julie Gunlock and Patrice Onwuka did all the heavy lifting. Thank you, Julie, for making it seem like people would rather I go on a longer vacation, which is my goal,
I didn't,
by the way.
I didn't have to put my glasses on once when Andrew was here.
You didn't need to lecture him? You didn't wave your finger in his face and emasculate him? Well, good for you. Coming up in 30 minutes, Maryland Delegate Kathy Szeliga. And at 8:05, Ron Vitiello with an update on the Trump administration tracking down some of those missing children that were lost in the system during the Biden administration. That's all coming up. But right now, Julie Gunlock, we've got Joe diGenova, legal analyst, former U.S. attorney to the District of Columbia. Good morning, Joe. Good to talk with you.
Good morning, Larry, from the Serengeti Plain, where I have a wildebeest in tow.
What? That's no way to talk about your beautiful wife.
No.
You are in so much trouble, Larry. My goodness.
So you're at a safari right now? That's exciting.
No, Larry, I was just taking up on your wonderful joke about the Serengeti Plain.
Oh. Yes. We all know those are the rules. When a ball goes into the stands, it's survival of the fittest. And
yes, that's very true.
Speaking of survival of the fittest, there's still a showdown going on here between Democrat mayors of crime-ridden Democrat-run cities and the Trump administration. Let's start with D.C. because it's the outlier. Last week, Mayor Muriel Bowser took to the podium, praised the Trump administration for working with the district council and working with local law enforcement, and basically invited them to continue this ad infinitum. She even got Phil Mendelson, chair of the district council, to agree with this. Is this because they've seen the light and they recognize this is a good thing, or is it because they know that if they resist, that could be the end of home rule?
It's the latter. She's made a very wise decision, which surprises the heck out of me. I didn't think she was that smart. She's cozied up to the president. She's cozied up to the president for the very obvious reason that she understands that she does not have total control in the city, and the presence of the National Guard and more federal agents is proof of that. Article 1 gives the president plenary authority over the District of Columbia, which Congress has occasionally delegated some parts of to local government. I don't think they have to worry about losing home rule because you need 60 votes in the Senate to do that, and I don't think the Republicans can get 60 votes. But the fight over that is something that she doesn't want because it's very distracting. Although the House is going to pass legislation which the city's not going to like, and that's fine. The city's not supposed to like everything that Congress does.
So let's pivot to some of the other cities, because now we're seeing a showdown with Chicago. We're seeing a showdown with Baltimore and Governor Westmore of Maryland, where they are, ready to resist any kind of federal oversight or presence in their towns. Obviously, the president has the right to increase the number of ICE officials and ICE officers in any of these cities to go after illegal immigrant criminals. But what other powers does the president have if he decides that the city of Chicago or the city of Baltimore, because of their lack of ability to protect American citizens in those cities, that the president can go in and do what exactly?
Well, he can flood the zone with as many civilian federal law enforcement officers as he wants. When it comes to the National Guard, with the exception of the District of Columbia, it's usually required that the governor of the state request the presence of federal troops. However, there are exceptions to that. For example, when President Eisenhower sent the National Guard in to allow black students to enter school, when Governor Faubus was the governor of Arkansas, that was done clearly over the objection of the governor. And that was law enforcement. They were sent in to protect those students and to get them in schools. There are plenty of examples of this throughout the history of the United States where the Guard has been used over the objections of a governor. It's better that it happened with the consent, but it is ultimately the president wins. For example, like this case out in California where the judge ruled that the president acted illegally in using National Guard to make arrests and do other things. The judge got a little bit right and most of it wrong, and he's going to be reversed ultimately by, if not the Ninth Circuit, by the Supreme Court. The president can send in National Guard to protect federal buildings, federal people, and officers of the court, the courts, the federal courts themselves, and can use them in almost nearly synchronous law enforcement ways without violating the Posse Comitatus Act.
Joe, I want to switch over. You probably saw the footage of this, although you probably didn't see it in any major news outlets, this murder of a young woman in North Carolina, stabbed by a career criminal. He'd been arrested and let go 14 times. What is going on with these judges allowing and these DAs not prosecuting 14 times? This guy was a violent criminal and let off. What is the situation with this provisional judge? And I've looked at her resume. She doesn't seem very qualified to do this job. What is the system down there that allows this to happen?
Well, state court systems are different all over the country. That's the miracle of federalism and the experimental petri dish that we call the states. Unfortunately, states come up with very stupid ideas sometimes, and the people who pay the price are the citizens of their state. This is a stupid idea in that state. It's bad legislation. It should be repealed. The question is, do the citizens of that state rise up in anger and get changes made? All of this stems from people not voting. You know, in most states, you don't have 50% of the people voting. So, right. Folks, wake up.
Hey,
and
Joe,
they elect people like that, yeah.
Did you see the Axios story about new revelations with regard to the use of the auto pen for pardons and clemency? Specifically, there were thousands of people who were granted clemency. Their life in prison sentences were reduced, or their death penalty sentences were reduced. And it appears as though the conversations on paper in emails between the Justice Department and the White House staff proves that the president had no idea. President Biden had no idea what he was signing. They even have, specific language there. Before I affix the president's name to this order, what details. So there was some kind of paper trail here. But does this give you any more insight into whether these pardons or clemency orders should stand based on the process involved here?
Yes, it does. And I think based on the process involved, these pardons are not valid. They are null and void, in my opinion. These were not legitimate grants of clemency under the presidential powers under Article 2. This is an absolute outrage. This is one of the greatest scandals in the history of the country, that we had a president who could not function, and in his place, people like Susan Rice and others granted clemency to people who were put together on a list by lefty nutsos in the bowels of the White House. I think the way you deal with this
hold on. That was going to be my follow-up as to how you do this, but I'm up against. Give me 1 minute, and then we'll come right back to you, Joe. It's 7:15.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
Joe Biden, famously in a New York Times interview, said, "I made the decisions about the pardons, executive orders, legislation, and proclamations. Any suggestion that I didn't is ridiculous and false." But now we have an email chain focusing on the infamous commutations that were executed in the final weeks of the Biden presidency, where a Biden staffer said in writing he doesn't review the warrants. Wow. In other words, You put it in front. Actually, I was about to say you put it in front of him, he signs it. No. It wasn't even put in front of him. The staff at the White House, in connection with the Justice Department, came up with the commutations, and then the auto pen was used to deliver the commutations. There is no indication anywhere in writing that Biden knew about it, let alone authorized this. So, Joe, you just said that you think this means that these pardons and these commutations are null and void. How does one go about challenging this?
Well, first of all, anybody who got one of those commutations and seeks civil rights, for example, if they didn't get a pardon, they can't get their civil rights back, so they can't vote. But they may try to vote. And so the answer is you have to file papers when somebody tries to do something saying they were pardoned or they were commuted. However, that's a painstaking task. What I would do differently is I would impanel a federal grand jury in the District of Columbia, and I'd start calling in forget the Capitol Hill hearings. Those have been very helpful, by the way, and they've been helpful in developing an investigative plan for a federal grand jury. I believe that the pardons and the commutations issued in this manner were crimes. I believe that they involved defrauding the American people of honest services and also defrauding the American people of a functioning government. And so the bottom line is start slapping people with subpoenas, put them in front of a grand jury, and you'll get even more truthful answers than you got from Capitol Hill.
Do you think a grand jury in Washington, D.C., though, would work? Can it be placed anywhere else?
It is possible you can make an argument to put it in the Eastern District of Virginia, but that's going to be pretty difficult because all of this stuff occurred in the District of Columbia in the White House. So it's pretty tough not to have venue there. What Congress needs to do in order to get around the problem of the jury pool in the District of Columbia, which it has the power to do, is create for D.C. crimes, create venue in any district in the United States.
I like it.
I like that. Let me speak hypothetically here because I get it about the concern about the grand jury in D.C. and the voter pool. What if, and I'm just hypothetically speaking here, Joe, what if an attorney general for a state like Florida or Texas, let's say, brought criminal charges against, say Anthony Fauci, who got one of those pardons. Let's say they determined that Anthony Fauci acted in a fraudulent and criminal fashion in undermining civil rights for students in the state of Texas, let's say, with regard to the policies having to do with shutting down the schools. And they brought criminal charges against Anthony Fauci. Fauci, of course, would declare, no, I have a pardon. You can't come after me. Now the venue has changed, hasn't it?
Well, the pardon doesn't cover state crimes. So if a state attorney general wanted to do that, they would be free to do so, but they'd have to figure out a good and sound legal theory for bringing the charges. But the federal pardon and commutation only covers federal crimes. It does not affect the power of the states to indict somebody. That's why Trump was in so much trouble, because his immunity did not cover that, although we've discovered now in New York that the presidential immunity ruling by the Supreme Court may very well have helped him because of the involvement of federal officials in all those cases, because it appears that there was complicity between the Biden White House and the state attorney's general office, which would make the immunity applicable.
Joe, on this story and many other stories that we're trying to sort of uncover, for instance, coming up a little later, we've got the former commissioner of Border Patrol to talk about tracking down these children who have been lost in the melee of the Biden border crisis. And all of these things, you hear people, even conservative commentators and people who claim that they're on the right saying, stop beating that dead horse. Stop talking about Biden. Let's move on. Trump won the election, so it's just move on. These are fundamental issues, especially with the auto pen. I mean, the 25th Amendment is there for a reason, and we've got to uncover what happened here so that it doesn't happen again, right?
Well, I don't think there's any doubt that you're absolutely correct, Larry. Look, the bottom line is the Biden people, coupled with the Obama people starting in 2016, conspired to deny the American people a duly elected president. When they defeated him in 2020, the fight against Trump continued in federal agencies, intelligence agencies, and among private law firms. That plot against the president never stopped, and it goes on until this day in the form of civil litigation that is purposely vexatious against the president and his family. The bottom line is this. The only way this ever gets settled, and to all of my conservative friends say move on, I say wait until a search warrant gets executed at your house and see how you feel. The bottom line is this. This will never be settled until there's a federal grand jury in Florida where Mar-a-Lago is and was to have a complete investigation of the violation of Donald Trump's civil rights by federal officials, local officials, state officials, and private law firms.
Listen, there's several reasons why I always look forward to our conversation at 7 a.m. on Mondays, Joe, mostly because You bring the law to the table, and you shoot things through a very sober lens. You don't promise our listeners that people are going to get frog marched and sent to Gitmo and all of that ridiculousness you hear from other radio stations and podcasts. You have a very sober and logical view of these things. But most importantly, you use words like efficacious. And I have such great respect for that.
And I use words which I stole from you, like serendipity.
Serendipity, yes. Serendipity is one of my faves. Thank you for revealing.
Or Serengeti.
Always great to talk with you. Yeah, exactly.
Goodbye.
Bye, Joe. Serendipity. Actually, oftentimes, if you're the wounded gazelle, it is not serendipitous to be on the Serengeti plane. You will learn immediately that you are not the fittest. It's 7:23.
Coming up, we'll talk to Maryland Delegate Kathy Szeliga about Baltimore crime and Trump's attempts to reduce it. Keep it here at 7:30.
WMAL-FM Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station. Making sense of the news. News Talk 105.9. News now. Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
It is 7:37, and coming up at 8:05, we're going to talk to Ron Vitiello, former acting deputy commissioner of Customs and Border Protection, about Trump administration uncovering some of those missing children, finding them. Tens of thousands of them, in fact. Still more to go, but we've got an update. It's Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock. Julie, I have a lot of friends who are named Karen. We got to come up with a different word.
I agree. Are you getting the complaints? I know. Yeah. I'm sorry, everyone. I'm sorry.
It's true. And no, and you're right, by the way.
It's a beautiful name, Karen.
It is a lovely name. I love the name, Karen. Yeah. And also, I have a feeling there's going to be like this. We should get a sponsor for LASIK surgery, because all of the women in our listening audience who have those black framed glasses, they're like, I don't need to be in costume.
I do like a thick framed glasses, but you're right. You got to trade them in now.
Joining us now is Maryland Delegate Kathy Szeliga, who would never take a baseball from a young boy at a baseball game. I'm guessing. Would you? Is there any? Would you ever find yourself in that position, Delegate Szeliga?
No, I think I'd high-five the guy and clap for his son. That was crazy. Good morning, exactly. Larry and Julie.
Well, Orioles fans are known for having class. I'm sorry. Compared to Phillies fans, I guess.
I mean, we are classy. I'm a former partial season ticket holder, and we were pretty classy.
Given Wes Moore's latest pronouncements, the hyperbolic, shallow, meaningless bromides that he's throwing out there about how it's embarrassing. In fact, I've got the audio here. Let's start with this, because the Trump administration obviously has cited Baltimore as one of the problems here with regard to major crime. It has consistently been in the top 5 for violent crime in this country. And Mayor Bowser has said, yeah, we're pretty happy. We want to keep this cooperation going with the federal government. And here comes Governor Wes Moore deciding that, I guess, Mayor Bowser knows nothing and doesn't is on the wrong side of this story. Here's Governor Moore yesterday speaking about this issue. Try to keep a straight face.
An occupation.
Say that.
And we do not need people putting in performative and theatrical resources because they do not care about the actual results that they're trying to hope for. If you want to learn what works, come down. Come spend time. Come learn. Come learn. And come learn that we're what we need. That we are the change we've been waiting for. And that progress is not impossible. Progress can happen, but it only happens when we choose to work together.
He is no Barack Obama, but he's trying his damnedest to Delegate Szeliga. Oh, it's embarrassing. You've come down. You have learned. You know what's going on. You're from Baltimore. What's needed here?
Well, I will tell you, because I'm intellectually honest, homicides are down, and let me tell you why. We have a new state's attorney. The woke state's attorney got thrown out. We have a great new state's attorney, and we had a federal prosecutor that worked together. Guess what they did? They targeted repeat violent offenders. Isn't that what we've been saying? Target the bad guys. And they locked them up, they arrested them, they prosecuted them, and they locked them up. So a lot of these really bad guys that were, let out, always on the streets, creating havoc, murdering people, they're in jail. So that's why our homicide rate is down. If you want to learn what to do, this is what you do. You arrest the bad guys, you prosecute the bad guys, and you put them in jail. And Wes Moore is trying to take credit for that. Now, that being said, Baltimore is still a dangerous city. And President Trump is absolutely right. But the beauty of President Trump is, he's put this promise out to send some National Guard troops to help Baltimore get their crime in order and protect citizens and residents and visitors and people that work there. And now all of a sudden, Wes Moore says, we could take some help from the FBI. First of all, we just want your money, but we'll take some FBI help. And now all of a sudden he's deploying state police there. Trump gets the outcome, and he's like, I told you so.
Yeah, and we saw more of that sort of pretend behavior from Wes Moore. He was walking around Baltimore sort of in a photo op. He was doing a photo op, and he was literally surrounded with security as he was walking around Baltimore this weekend. And again, taking credit and saying, we're on this. But, this case, in this horrible case in North Carolina of a young woman being stabbed, Kathy, that was so terrible. And I think people really are frightened in cities like Baltimore. And there's no assurance that these politicians are going to do anything more than a photo op or for these false promises. What advice do you give to people that are worried about this?
Well, they are rightfully worried. The first thing we have to admit is the crime data is probably not 100% correct. In Maryland, they made crime legal. So juvenile crime is legal. And, we've got juveniles that are committing, 80 car thefts. Yeah. And if they're under 13, they don't do anything to them because they made crime legal other than the most heinous murder or first-degree rape for juveniles. So first you have to ask about the stats that they're constantly talking about. They need to make crime, illegal again. And that poor girl on the train, it's heartbreaking. She was innocent, sitting there looking at her phone, and the victim of the most heinous murder you could think of.
Yeah.
So crime is down because the state's attorney is out, and you've got a real person putting people behind bars. Plus, Wes Moore, along with the Baltimore mayor, have determined that more state police can come and help on the ground in Baltimore. So I guess the question here is, why is he deploying more police in Baltimore now? Why didn't he do it a year ago or 2 years ago when crime was even worse? The only reason he's doing it is to grandstand against Donald Trump. So, like you said, Trump ends up actually helping the people of Baltimore, and Wes Moore's trying to do a victory lap.
Right, and I think the average person sees through the hypocrisy of that. How can he stood at a podium and said in a well-scripted speech, "Get our name out of your mouth," to President Trump 3 times in a row. Get our name out of your mouth. And then he wonders why he can't be a serious politician. Who says that to the president? That's, and then we want to work together.
Well, he's trying to out Gavin Newsom. I think you're right. The average person knows what's going on here. I hope the average Maryland voter does as well. Kathy Szeliga, always good to talk with you. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much.
It's 7:45.
WMAL's Vince Colonnese, weekdays at noon on 105.9 WMAL, making sense of the news.
We've got another Maryland man to tell you about, 35-year-old Hugo Hernandez Mendez. He's from Guatemala, living in the country illegally in Bowie. of course, but that makes him a Maryland man, and I'm sure that Chris Van Hollen and Wes Moore are going to run to his defense. Jamie Raskin better get in line, too. Oh, by the way, he's also now been arrested for the murder of 19-year-old Dakara Rose Thompson of Lanham, Maryland. Don't need to talk about her, though. Who cares about her if you're Chris Van Hollen? No, you got to go to the mat for Hugo Hernandez Mendez, who is now being accused of murdering this young woman and dumping her naked body in the South River just off Route 50 near Annapolis. He had already been arrested by Park Police on a DUI charge in April, but was released pending trial, because that's what we do, you know.
Larry, you joke about a Maryland man. CBS Baltimore actually said a Maryland man was charged with murder. They actually called him a Maryland man. I mean, have we learned nothing? Have we learned nothing about this? No, he was an illegal alien. He was a criminal, and he. It's
horrific.
Story.
Our heart and we weep for the family of this young woman, who, by the way, because Black Lives Matter. By the way, she is African American. I don't know. Will that make a difference for Democrats in the state of Maryland? No, they've got a new favorite sort of story to protect and celebrate, and that has to do with illegal immigrant criminals who rape and murder innocent Americans on a regular basis. Because if you don't stand up for them, then you're taking a knee and bowing and kissing the ring of Donald Trump, and that's the most important thing. This is what the Democrats have become, sadly. At least there has been some media coverage of this story. But it happens right as Wes Moore is grandstanding and thumping his chest, saying how he doesn't want any help from the Trump administration when it comes to any crime mitigation in Baltimore or anywhere else in Maryland. Just so you know, whatever assistance Trump gives, whether Wes Moore wants it or not, it will be in the form of ICE agents. And it'll be ICE agents like this on the ground in Baltimore who will be able to get people like this scum before they kill again. It's 7:53.